full papers, and
I don't even know why I'm here.
you've voiced us on stage, haven't you?
Yeah.
You want to switch
Happens
spots?
a lot. You should be.
I don't want to be in too
Halfway through the panel, we'll switch spots.
Change places. Oh God. All right. Well, I've been asked to help moderate this little meet M.A. Larson here. This is M.A. Larson. Meet him. For those of you who are in the room and don't know anything, he is one of the major show writers for My Little Pony, as well as other series. He actually, I mentioned this in the previous panel I helped moderate, he actually wrote an episode of Gravity Falls, if you guys have seen that. Yeah, I knew somebody would be a fan of that here. That guy's prepared for war. He's got chainmail.
Sell down at the vendor lobby.
Well, you also worked on Kick Buttowski, is that right?
Kick Buttowski, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. A couple shows that haven't aired yet.
No one
I
has
wrote
his
a couple
wiki page
episodes
up?
of Annoying Orange.
What's that?
No one has his wiki page up?
Something like that.
And there's a new Disney show called Randy Cunningham, Ninth Grade Ninja, that I wrote a few of those too. That's really funny. I heard the title, I was like, oh, fuck. It's really funny.
Well, I guess I'll just start off with a basic background question. And he's going to roll his eyes because one thing that Everfrio hasn't released yet is our interview we did with him. Actually recorded it with Mr. Fullpapers here. So some of these questions may be repeats. Are you okay with that?
I'm ready.
All right. My first question then is just going back in general. How did you get into writing for cartoons?
See, I said this in the interview many times.
See, I told you.
Most of the questions I answered by saying this is where I lose a dozen Twitter followers, but I didn't really know a whole lot
And
about
then you gained
animation.
a dozen, didn't you?
Yeah.
I think over the course of that interview, you gained like 100 followers, and it hadn't even been released yet.
Wait till it comes out.
Yeah.
They're all gone. I don't really know a lot about animation. When I moved to LA from New York, I wrote movies and things like that, dark indie movies. And a friend of mine was an animator. Oh, Jesus.
Everybody, that's Amy King Rogers.
I didn't mean that how it sounded. Totally didn't mean that how it sounded.
He's like, oh crap, she made it.
400 followers.
Oh.
She definitely will after some of these answers. So a friend of mine was an animator at Cartoon Network, and I didn't know what I was going to do when I moved to LA. And so he said, you should watch SpongeBob, write a couple specs of that. So that's what I did. I rented like 13 DVDs and spent an entire weekend watching SpongeBob, and I was like, wow, this is really a good show. And wrote a couple episodes of that and sent them to a show called My Gym Partner's a Monkey, Cartoon Network, and they hired me. And I was really lucky because there's not a lot of staff writing jobs in animation, and I got a staff job right off the bat. Most of it's freelance. And that was great because it helped me, it gave me some security. I was there for 2 seasons and I got to meet people, and some of the people I met there I'm still working for. The creators of that show have a new show on the Hub called Littlest Pet Shop that I wrote for. That's very funny. Can't wait for that to come out. So that was it. I didn't know anything about animation until, I mean, like, as much as the average guy my age does. I watched G.I. Joe and Transformers and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I know one thing also that a lot of people don't know is that you're from my home state of Minnesota.
That's right.
That's right. Like all people of quality, but no, what is it?
I'm from England, so I'll just be over here.
Yeah, you would be, wouldn't you?
It's a poor man's Minnesota.
Well, no, but coming from your background, going further back even, did you know you were going to go into writing?
No, I wanted to be a director. When I was in high school and college, it was independent film was massive. It was Reservoir Dogs kind of time, and everybody wanted to be a director, and so did I. And I went to college for filmmaking, screenwriting, that kind of thing. I wanted to write and direct, and then I moved to New York after college and produced a couple of short films and realized how much I hated being on set and didn't want anything to do with shooting films. Just writing, so I switched over strictly screenwriting.
What'd you hate about being on set? I'm just curious. Was there a specific?
The call times are like 7 a.m., which is just atrocious. And then you're there all day, and it's a lot of standing around, waiting. It's really stressful, but nothing's happening.
That sounds like a convention. Not this one. This isn't like that, but. Well, okay. So you
I
went.
just got mentioned by Amy Keating Rogers. It's like the worst combination of huge amounts of stress and absolutely nothing happening. And I hate both of those things, and I just couldn't do it. So I gave up on that and went straight into writing.
Well, so what took you from New York to Los Angeles? What's
My wife.
Really?
My wife worked at Miramax, and she got a job at Sony Pictures, and I was like, well, let's go. So I didn't really have anything holding me there. And my brother lives in LA, and so it was like, why not? Let's try it.
Yeah. Well, what was your first LA animation writing job that you got?
That was by Jim Partners and Monkey.
Okay. And then from there, I know that you mentioned a couple of the other shows.
It was really scary. That show, I came in halfway through season 3. There was a hiatus, and I didn't know what that meant. And I was like, oh, God, what's happening? How do I get another job? Then there was a season 4, so I got really cocky. It was like, I have so much time. And then that ended, and then the show got canceled. And I was like, what am I going to do? And luckily, a guy that I worked with on Gym Partner, Chris Savino, who also wrote for Pony, knew people on Foster's, so he recommended to that, and I got an episode of that. Sure. I wish I had more of those, but I came on right at the end of that show, so I only got to do one of those. And then it was just sort of that's where I met Lauren and Rob, and it's, then I just started meeting people and got more and more jobs. So,
are the majority of writers in the animation field that you run into, are they like that with the freelancing, or?
Yeah. Most of the jobs are freelance.
So
there
it's
are
really
very few staff jobs.
I think it's kind of interesting too, that, and something I found out when I went into interviewing even the artists on the show is that, in a sense, the show is put together by a combination of contracts. I mean, you're contracted to write episodes, they're contracted to storyboard it.
I don't know what their contract is, but they're a lot more cohesive because they have all the directors, they have the voice talent up there. Everything happens there except for the writing. Mm-hmm. We're all freelance.
It's kind of interesting that all the writers are in Los Angeles, and all the producers and voice talent are in Vancouver.
And it's really strange because the second time in my life I met Charlotte was today. I've only met her once before at one of our writers' summits. So we don't even really see each other all that much.
Have you ever met Amy Keating Rogers?
I love Amy Keating.
I hear she likes crashing panels. Well, okay, so when did you get hired on to Pony? When did that magic moment happen?
I had a friend of mine who had worked, he was in the same kind of circles as Lauren and Rob and some of those people, and I'm sure Amy too. This guy named Randy, and I worked with him on my Gym Partner, the Monkey, and he knew that I didn't have a job and that Pony was looking for writers, so he kind of put us together, and that's when Lauren sort of remembered me. And so I came in to do an episode, and then I just got into the rotation. So it was a really nice marriage of I needed a job and they needed a writer.
Do they sometimes do that? I mean, not just, maybe Pony doesn't do this, but do they have that where they'll bring in a writer, say, for one episode as like a test?
Yep.
And then bring them on for more?
I was about to test for Lauren and her husband's new show, but I got something else, so I didn't do that. But I've worked with her before, but I was still going to test, and with him before.
Yeah.
I was still going to test on an episode because they need to know if your sensibility fits, and you always get tested first.
And if I remember correctly, your first episode was Swarm of the Century?
Yeah.
Did you do anything when you were writing that episode to really make it stand out, since it is kind of that trial period of a sort?
It was super tricky, actually. It's so much easier to come onto a show when there's a season or two, like Foster's, you could watch a million episodes and really get the voices, and then it's no problem. With Pony, I could read some scripts, I could read a couple of Amy scripts, but there was nothing for me to watch. I couldn't hear the voices. And I didn't really, you got Lauren's Bible, which was great and thorough, and that helped immensely, but you're still sort of, first script, you're still sort of like feeling in the dark, and like, I don't really know if Fluttershy would do this, but screw it, let's try it. So there's definitely a little bit of that at the beginning, when you can't hear them.
Well, and that was something you mentioned in our interview, is that you found that one of the ponies was insanely difficult to write
Her?
for. Yeah.
Yeah. Fluttershy is tough. I still think so.
What's the hardest part about writing for Fluttershy? Because that episode focused on her as well.
She was she was a little bit of a runner. She wasn't like the star, but
No, but she was.
I don't know. It's easy to make her one note. It's easy to make her just that. That's why I like jokes like, what was that one joke I said at the interview?
Oh, I don't remember the exact word.
There was one line I wrote for Rarity that I can't remember. That I'll remember later. Let's move on.
Well, I mean, but you've also said too, and now the more and more I bring up stuff that was from the interview, the more and more I realize we got to get that out. It's almost out. You said one thing that you really enjoyed about good show writing was when you took characters and put them in a context they shouldn't be in.
Yeah,
something like that.
When you can get like contradictions going and people doing things they wouldn't ordinarily do. Putting Discord against Fluttershy was a lot of fun. There's so much power on one side and so little on the other side, and yet she kind of wins that interaction.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff is really fun.
He just gives up and just pokes her.
Yeah. Or in Sonic Rainbow, we have Rainbow Dash, who's so confident. The whole episode about her losing her confidence. Like, those are the really fun stories.
Well, how much of those kind of character elements are drawn from, say, Lauren's input or from other writers' input? And how much of it is you saying, okay, I want to take Rainbow Dash as a character and take her there? Because I know that, for example, like I think did you say that Lauren came up with the idea for the Paris sprites, or that it was in the Bible or something? I think it was.
Well, Lauren and Rob would write the premises, which are like a paragraph, and get those approved, and then they would call whoever is up in for the meeting. So I don't know who came up. I'm sure it was Lauren who came up with those. And then you take that paragraph and you just extend it out into a half hour.
Well,
So.
and it definitely seems that you kind of you go off of that basis and really try, to take. I imagine you make a point to take the characters into those kind of uncomfortable positions, like for example, Rainbow Dash being
Right.
kind of.
Yeah, because you want to see how they're going to work out of it.
Is that something that would have been detailed in that original paragraph, or is that something that?
No, the original paragraph, you kind of get the broad strokes of the 3 acts, and then sort of what the lesson is. Kind of here's what the main character is going to learn. But that's kind of it. It's just really the broad strokes. And then when you're sitting in the room, it's an entire day. You sit there and you just sort of brainstorm and say, well, we could do this or this. What is the other characters doing in the episode? Particularly in season 1, we wanted to use all 6 in every single episode, which gets really hard to do. There's some episodes where it's like it doesn't make any sense to have Rarity in this episode, but in the first season we really felt like she had to be in. But they all had to be in every episode. What did you ask me?
No, that was the idea, is to have you talk about the writing.
Oh, okay.
That's how it works. Okay, no, well, and honestly though, I mean, I imagine you wrote a few episodes in the first season, you wrote more episodes in the second season. Did you find that further on it was harder to, say, write for a character, or easier to write for a character because you had put in that kind of... Well, for example, with Rainbow Dash, in Sonic Rainbow, you showed that she did have a vulnerability. How did that impact how you characterized her in further episodes?
It only gets easier.
Really?
Because not only like stuff that I wrote, but then I could read other writer scripts and watch episodes and see what they did, and like that was kind of funny when this little thing happened. I'm going to go off of that. The more they're created, the more they're fleshed out, the easier it is.
Well, and I just realized you also wrote. Not that you wrote it, I knew that, but I just realized something about. You wrote "It's About Time," and in that again, it's Twilight kind of facing her own, well, literally facing herself, but also facing kind of her own weaknesses.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's kind of where the comedy comes from.
Right.
I think you said at one point that you like Modern Family as a show because it would pair up characters who were opposites.
Exactly. Yeah, Modern Family does such a nice job of some episodes are better than others, but there's 3 families, multiple people in each family. They take weird combinations of people and put them in a situation. And what would happen if these 2 were in this? It's the same kind of thing. Like, I'm not going to be able to think of an example, but you put Rarity and Applejack together in this situation, what happens? That's what the character comedy is.
That's oh man,
Look Before You Sleep.
Yep, Look Before You Sleep. I always forget the title of that one episode every single time.
Because you put Pinkie Pie and Rarity together or somebody else, that's a totally different episode. It's all about how do these two conflict with each other.
Well, I imagine the more that those characters are developed, that you can take the characters, put them together, and the script almost writes itself. In a sense. Not that it's easy, but that it
Totally writes itself.
totally writes itself. You just grab a bottle and sit at the keyboard and just mash your hands on it. But I mean, I imagine, like, for example, when you hear Rarity and Pinkie Pie, that takes you as a writer in a certain direction.
Yeah.
You kind of have an instinct where you want to take that story.
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of an inherent conflict there, and then if you add like another element, like if it's the running of leaves or whatever it is, it really gives you an easy guide of where the story's going to go. Plus the premise, Lauren has already seen that, so she'll say this is going to be these characters and here's where they go. Sometimes that changes, sometimes what she had in the premise, this might be funnier if it's whoever.
Well, you wrote one episode that I was incredibly excited about when it was first announced it was going to be airing, Luna Eclipse. And I think for all of us who were bronies before last season, everyone wanted to see Luna again. And everyone was really interested to see how Luna's characterization came about. And so I wanted to know, what were your what did you draw upon when you developed her character for that episode?
Not much. I mean, that was exactly what you were talking about earlier. I get the premise and I go in and they're like, you're doing the Luna episode. And I'm like, awesome. Let me watch what she's been in so I can get her voice.
5 seconds.
Like, wait a minute.
I'm so sorry.
Is there a third part to this episode? She didn't exist, So it was sort of, and she actually changed a lot in our writing meetings. I don't know how much I can say about that, but what ended up on the screen was definitely not what we started with.
Well, I think, at least my experience, that you can talk about the development of a character as long as it doesn't give away, say,
Is this
future
true?
seasons.
Is this right? Is he lying to me?
I'm always lying to you, though. No, I can't. But
I think if you talk about what it started at and what you got to, then
yeah.
cool.
It definitely started out more, Lauren's idea was the, I'm not going to remember her name, the girl from Parks and Rec.
Oh,
Anybody watch that?
it's
Yes.
Amy Poehler's character.
Not Amy Poehler, the dark-haired girl.
Aubrey Plaza's character?
Yes.
Yeah.
That kind of vibe, which was great. I mean, it was really, we all laughed a lot at that version of her. And then she just sort of, I actually wrote an entire script of her that way. And it was really funny and it worked really well. But then it kind of morphed into more of, she's been gone for a long time. She would sort of be stuck in the old times and that kind of thing. So we morphed her more that way. And we're like, yeah, that's actually better. So.
Well, I kind of wanted to ask you a question about the general, the language of the show. I mean, Luna specifically speaks in kind of an old-timey, thou and thee, and the fun has been doubled.
Right.
And I love her for that. Well, thank you for that.
But would have loved her the other way too. She was really good the other way.
But, I imagine as a writer for this show, I was curious, compared to other cartoons, how is it like writing an episode where you have to say every pony this, every pony that?
Oh my God.
Or is that just something you kind of laugh at and just do it?
I have to stop from doing it in my own text now. It's like, at first it was just horrible. I cringed every time I wrote it, and then by like the third script I was like, oh, I just did that and I didn't realize it. It just becomes part of the language.
I think it's a rite of passage for bronies to accidentally say it in regular speech. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about?
It was very hard at first. It was very hard at first. But now I don't even notice.
Now it's just instinctive.
Yeah.
Well, was there an episode among your many that you've done for the show that you enjoyed writing more than the others?
Yeah, definitely the Cider Squeezy.
Really?
That song was so fun to write, and I'd never watched The Music Man. I've always talked about how much I hate musicals. Rob and Lauren were like, "You've got to watch the Music Man," and I was like, fine, I'll watch it, and I just loved it. Absolutely loved it.
And we're talking the 1962 version.
The
now.
Robert Preston.
Not the nonsense with Matthew
No,
Broderick.
the real one.
Yeah, the real one.
I watched that, and he came to the "You Got Trouble" song, and I was just like, whoa, this is so much better than the Simpsons version of it.
I was going to say.
I'll choose the Simpsons version of it. And then I ripped that one off, the original.
Well, I do think it's funny when bronies will say, "Oh man, they must have got it from The Simpsons. It was the monorail song all over again." It's like,
Which was genius, by the way. Their version was great.
Oh, yeah.
But the original is just, it's incredible.
Was it your idea to have instead of having one scammer to have two?
No, that wasn't the premise. It was my idea to have them kind of be the same guy. Basically the same one guy with two brains. But it was two brothers, but when we came to the story meeting, we didn't really know what to do beyond that. I'm not even sure that was my idea. Hell, it was my idea.
Did you name the machine?
Yeah. I did. That episode was originally called The Cider Horse Rules. And then Rob was like, that movie is all about abortion. So I just turned in the script and it had the name of the machine, and we all just said, let's just call it that.
As soon as you said that, for some reason, the phrase "mine's got rocks in it" just I don't know why. Which, by the way, thank you for that line. Thank you for giving us yet another incarnation of Bon Bon. Which I suppose in the script you said background pony or something.
It's like random pony number 2. Something like that. And then the DHX people put in the specifics.
Yeah.
Well, with the lyrics?
Yeah.
Oh.
And this is something actually that a lot of people don't know, is that while Daniel Ingram takes and makes the final melodies, writers like M.A. here and Amy over there actually write the lyrics for the songs.
Amy writes the songs. She can write. I don't know how to write music to save myself, so I just write the lyrics. And I'll say in the script, like, in the style of "You Got Trouble" from Music Man or something like that. Just so he has something to go off of, because otherwise you read the lyrics of that song, if you didn't know what it was referencing, I'm sure he's like, this doesn't make any sense. There's no rhythm or anything to this, because it's just a guy talking. So you just kind of give him that, and then he makes this awesome song out of it. That dude knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's incredible at what he does. And I was going to say too, for example, with the way that you wrote Super Sire Speedy 6000, Squeezy Speedy. I
love that you can't say it.
Somebody say it, please.
Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000.
Thank you. First of all, that's amazing alliteration.
I could just imagine those guys singing that, just like cursing me.
And that makes you grin, doesn't it?
You just say Spriter, and the R's keep coming. Anyway.
One thing that none of the fans really have seen, and I'm not expecting you to be able to show that at all, but it is how the scripts look when you present them to the animation students. So I wanted to know how much visual detail you're able to put in the scripts, or do you write, for example, did you write into the script for that episode that they were going to be wearing straw hats or et cetera, or is that something that they took and ran with? Because I know that the storyboarders and the artists put in a lot of those details,
right.
But I wanted to know whether you put any kind of visual cues in your scripts.
It totally varies by writer. My personal philosophy is, if it's a part of the story, like the way Twilight looks in It's About Time, those details are in there. She had a cut, she had the mane, the black, all that stuff's in the script because it's important to the story. Straw hats, that would be me taking somebody else's job. That's like the designers can handle that. They know it's an old timey kind of guy, and they drew fantastic characters out of it. It's like this is something I learned before animation. When I was learning how to write scripts, they would constantly tell me, "Don't do the director's job in the script." You're supposed to write something that can be interpreted by the director, and this is another case of that. It's like I don't want to, unless it's a story point. I don't want to tell the character designer how to do their job.
Yeah.
Especially since they're really good. Let them do it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, again, the animation crew is just incredible for DHX, and just the visual cues. Have you ever had it where you've gone back and seen an episode that you wrote and saw the visuals afterwards and were surprised either pleasantly or unpleasantly by it?
It wasn't my episode, but the first time I saw, I think it was the season 2 story meeting, the first time I saw the pilot, Lauren played it, and I was just like, oh, that's what it's going to look like. I wanted to lick the screen. It was like Skittles, melted Skittles everywhere. It was just like so far beyond what I was expecting. Beautiful, fluid, voices were great, music was incredible at the time. I mean, everything was like, oh, this is a different level. this isn't like phoned in My Little Pony. This is the real. This is gonna be a good show.
Well, and when you had seen that, had you only written the first episode that you that was the Swarm of the Century, or had you already gone further? Because my question then would be, especially with season 2, after seeing the visual style of the show, did that affect how you wrote scripts for the show afterwards?
Yes, I think I probably wrote all my season 1 ones before that. In fact, yeah, I mean, we didn't have the season 2 meeting until all the scripts were done. I think, yeah. But yeah, I mean, once you can see what it looks like and you know, okay, they probably can't physically do this, or they can do this, or this location is here, you know, you just got to see it all a lot better. Like I said earlier, the more there is to read and watch, the easier it is, because you know the world and you know the parameters.
For ponies in particular, I mean, this is something we kind of discussed even briefly at the panel earlier today, but ponies in particular, they have hooves, not hands. And that, I suppose, would kind of present some problems when you're writing a script. When you come up with the script based off extrapolating off of the, that paragraph that you're given, do you find that it's often a challenge to write because the ponies just wouldn't be able to do certain things, or limited by
There were moments where, we'd be brainstorming and I would say, oh, what if this happens? And Lauren would say, well, they don't have hooves. Or Rob would say, well, they could do it with the horn. But it's like every pony. It's like eventually you kind of just don't do that anymore. You don't have them grab things anymore unless they have a horn. You just kind of get used to it, I guess.
Yeah.
The longer you do it and the more you understand the characters of the world, you just don't want them grabbing things.
Did you ever think you were going to be writing kids show
No.
script?
No, absolutely not.
I mean, I gotta imagine that that's kind of a surprising moment where you realize you wrote a musical number for a show about cartoon horses.
Yeah.
And everyone in this room is jealous of you for it.
This, I didn't really see this coming.
That's actually where I was gonna go. See, you anticipated that one. No, honestly, I mean, when did you learn about the Brony fandom? I mean, it wasn't today, but...
We talked about this, so I hope I don't contradict my earlier answer.
It'll be funnier if you did.
Today, there was a story meeting in the second season. I think it was Secret My Access. And Lauren started talking about bronies, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Pretty laid in, I guess. Although, we did the math on this, didn't we? It was pretty early.
Yeah, we did do the math.
When you go backwards to how long it takes for a script, it was pretty early on. And she wrote down, I remember her writing 4chan on this piece of paper and handing it to me. Like, look at this. Take a look.
Every time somebody says 4chan, this is my 4th convention this year for Pony, and every time somebody says 4chan, the room goes, oh. I've gotten like half and half with Reddit. Usually people are like, yeah. Well, it's either like there's one person like, woo, and then like there are 2 people like, eh. Did you go to 4chan then?
No, she gave me the paper and I lost it.
Better for it.
Yeah.
Sorry, now I got ice. But she was telling me about it, and we realized this is going to take up a lot of the story meeting time. We talked about this. She just wrote it down. Take a look at this. I lost that paper, and then the next story meeting, which would have been the Cider Squeezy, I asked her what it was again, and she wrote it down again, and then I took a look.
So you did go to 4chan then?
Yes.
And you saw the image boards?
Yes. I have seen the image boards.
I'm so sorry.
And what was your initial reaction? How much of your drink did you spit upon your kid?
How many watch lists am I on now? That was my first exposure, and then she started telling me about the more mainstream kind of, pony fandom and where I could find that kind of thing. Wow, this is huge. And then I started getting these, like, I did a panel, not a panel, a workshop kind of thing. This thing called Film Independent, which used to be IFP, for one of those small dark indie scripts I wrote, and they did an online dossier for everybody who's done this workshop, and I started getting email requests through that. And I'd never seen these before, but it was like Film Independent had sent you a message, and it was you people. Asked me if I was the same guy who did this show, and it's like, oh, they're out there. They're real.
I hope they are. So I've been seeing a lot of them.
Or else this is like a really elaborate Truman Show kind of thing, right?
Yeah, behind the sky is a concrete wall.
It would be very elaborate.
Well, I mean, so since your first, fateful foray into 4chan.
Ooh, alliteration.
Yeah. How often, or if you do often, have you gone online to look at what the community's produced? And if so, what have you seen that,
I don't look at much. It's we're not allowed legally to read the fictions, and I wouldn't want to anyways. It's then when I go to the show, I'm gonna have that in my head. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I try to avoid it for that reason because I don't think it would be great if the show started to feel more like it was being influenced by us looking at that stuff.
And I've heard that actually from other writers. Actually, I think Amy mentioned that in the interview we recorded with her. That really the concern comes down to if you're writing something, say that a fan fiction had written, that it could be a copyright issue.
Yeah.
So I mean, is the temptation there though?
I just know that I can't.
Yeah.
It's sort of. It's kind of like Hollywood standard, I guess. I used to work for this director in New York, and every time somebody would send something in, my job was to send it back unopened and say, we can't look at this. And this is the same thing. It's like, we can't do that, It's just kind of a hard line, and I don't really have that much time either.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them out there.
Yes, there are.
Would you?
I'd probably take a look at a few of them, yeah.
Not cupcakes.
I've heard I should not look at that.
Not cupcakes.
Yeah, in fact, like these guys were telling me earlier what that one is, and I'm like, I don't want that in my head when I go into a story meeting. You know what I mean? Like, there's an innocence about the show, and I don't want that in my mind when I'm brainstorming Pinkie Pie episodes. You know what I mean?
And this is something.
Not that there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying it's like for us, I think it's best if we just go in.
And this is something I've heard actually from the artists on the show too, and really all the creators, is that like I was talking to Jim Miller, the lead, senior storyboarder lead at DHX, and he said that he doesn't really go and look at fan art either, or go online and see that, because he would rather approach creating the show independently so that it's not affected, so that it pony, and that if the fandom springs up around it, then it's for its own, that the value of the show is its own, not because the fans were,
I mean, honestly, to me, it's more for fans of the show than for me. It's like I don't think people want to watch a show that's being heavily influenced like that and changing. Like they're watching it for a reason, and so we should just keep doing it how we were doing it, which was kind of in a vacuum, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I think people too are, concerned about the effect of fan service, which.
Yeah.
So, what time do we have? I'm just curious.
Just after 8.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, so in a minute here, we'll open this up to Q&A.
You guys are all missing karaoke right now.
We're missing more than we else are.
So first question for Q&A. Will you go do karaoke?
I need something else in here.
Will you do karaoke?
I might. There's a good chance. There's a much better chance she will, but there's a good chance.
I'm going to say this. If somebody at this convention doesn't buy M.A. Larson a cider, it will be a travesty against the community, given what he's written. Cider. He wrote that!
I love that episode. Plus, I love Applejack. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that episode featured all the family, too.
Right.
Which was good to see their interactions. I thought that was actually something a little more subtle, but it was still there, that they, you got to see how Granny Smith reacted to Big Mac reacting to, to Apple Bloom.
You see them actually working together.
Yeah.
Literally working.
It's actually a family farm.
Right.
And that has value to them. Of course, I heard one person, bemoan that economics had been brought into the play. And I told them that they were overthinking it. But
I think that's true.
And then they told me that we were all bronies, and I had to, nod in resignation, but that's okay. Well, okay, maybe open up to Q&A then.
Cool.
If you have a question, maybe raise your hand and I can point. And there we go, tuxedo.
Okay, Mr. Larson, I've been wondering, with every other show you've written for, you've always written your full name. Why with this show do you write it as M.A. Larson?
Because my agent told me you can't possibly use your real name on that show. I was writing on Symbiotic Titan on Cartoon Network. My previous show to that was Kick Buttowski. I had a lot of boy stuff going on, and my agent was like, "You're going to dilute your boy credits and your action credits if you use a name on this." So he's like, "Just use your initials. It's still you. It's and I can use that on." Then I did a preschool show where I could use that name too. So that's how it came about, and now I like it better. I never really liked my name all that much anyway, so I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool. And the show's way bigger than anything else I've ever written, so I'll be MA.
Did you ever tell your agent that he was exactly wrong?
Every time he got one of the checks.
Well, and I think that's that's the nature of this show. It broke a gender stereotype.
I thought going in it was going to be one of those things where and it was actually. I remember telling my mother-in-law, "Can you believe I'm writing for My Little Pony?" And then it aired, and I was like, "Oh, I write for My Little Pony."
And I have to give you all credits to speaking to a mother-in-law. That takes bravery. All right, next question, sir.
I think for a lot of the fandom, I think one of the funniest lines ever is at the end of Cider Squeezy when Applejack declares he has learned nothing. I think the second most popular shirt on Reload.
Yeah, it's got a
Drink cider, learn nothing.
Learn nothing.
I love that. Oh, that's fantastic.
Where did that one come from? Because I lost it at that.
Yeah, I did too.
Yep.
So that's like, over halfway through season 2, the morals stopped being just Twilights after season 1, and then it started to be like, we do the whole episode, we're like, this is a really good episode, it's funny, there's no moral here, what are we going to do? And so I think I pitched it to them in the outline, because I think I left that story meeting without a moral and pitched in the outline, like, what if she just says this? And we said, well, try it. And I think Lauren and Rob said, try it. And then the hub was like, cool, which I was shocked. I was shocked the hub let us do that, but they did. So it was more like, there's no moral.
She was right all along.
Yeah, she didn't learn anything. But then there's also like a backdoor moral. Like I already knew my friends. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
All right, you had a question.
So I've kind of got a follow-up to that then. After season 1, the show wasn't required to be E/I anymore. Did that change how you guys approached it?
Amy's nodding back there.
I didn't really think so. I mean, it made it easier.
It made it easier to write for.
It made it easier to write for.
With the E/I
Educational
thing,
information.
It made it
Oh.
so that it kind of was shackles on us.
Yeah.
And then once it was gone, it was like, woohoo, freedom!
It didn't really change the kind of stories, but it definitely made it easier to write.
Well,
there's just things you didn't have to worry about anymore, and you can go a little bit darker and things like that.
Well, it wasn't educational anymore, so you didn't have to learn anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, there must be a certain amount of fun to being able to write something darker for a kid's show.
Yeah.
And having that freedom. Is that something that I guess, is that something unique to this show among the shows you've worked on, that they were willing to go that direction? Because you've worked with...
Not really. I mean, there was some really dark stuff in Symbiotic Titan, which is a totally different kind of show. But it depends on the show, Some shows like Kick Buttowski are never going to be dark. This show had a lot more mythology and character depth to it. But that actually reminds me of something you asked me earlier. When I saw something animated, like the apple scene in Return of Harmony was super dark. And I thought it was dark in the script, but I saw it animated, I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like, that's great. That's darker than I expected. The balloons with Pinkie Pie. They were a lot more sinister than I thought they would do, and they really went for it. And I was like, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's one of the more memorable scenes to me in that episode. All right, next question. I saw the red tie first.
Awesome. Outside of the episodes you've written for My Little Pony, which episode in both seasons is your absolute favorite?
I swear to you, I'm not saying this because she's right there, but Best Night Ever, I love. I love, love, love Best Night Ever. It's like all the characters spotlighted. The song is fantastic. It's such a good vibe, and I love being in Canterlot, and there's so much happening, and I love that episode. That's a great episode. And with the wrap-ups, the song is just insane.
and I can confirm that he said that in our interview too a while back. So it's
yeah, exactly.
It's not because you're here. She's like, yeah, whatever.
All the rest of them sucked out.
All right, next question. I saw.
So you wrote Sonic Rainboom, right? Was that like your idea, or was that Lauren's idea?
That was the premise I got.
That was the premise.
Yep.
Love that episode.
I got called in for that
Love
meeting,
it.
so thanks.
All right, I'm very interested in learning how to do screenwriting, and to kind of help myself figure out how it all worked, I started breaking down all the My Little Pony episodes into their 3-act structure through Sid Field's paradigm. So now with a lot of the episodes, it turned out to be very easy to do. For example, like putting your hooves, putting the hooves down in Hearts and Hooves Day. It came out, exposition, inciting incident, plot point, midpoint, bam, bam, bam. Your episodes were a lot harder to do. I still don't think I got some of them right. So I was curious, do you guys actually use the paradigm to kind of map out the episode before you start filling it in, or is that you were saying how you get a premise? Is it actually Lauren Foss that's kind of making the structure, or do none of you guys use the structure at all? You're just able to kind of just wing it?
We don't use it that in depth. We use a 3-act structure because there's 2 commercial breaks, and that's what you want. You want to end on a nice break, something with a little bit of cliffhangery. So the first thing we do in a story meeting is where are the act breaks. Should it be here? Should it be here? That's the first thing you look for, is where's Act 1 going to end? Where's Act 2 going to end? And then you just start filling it in from there. So it's not necessarily that in-depth, but it is definitely a 3-act structure, and you want the end of the second act to be the most, the biggest. But I was saying to these guys earlier, and some of you were at the panel, but we were talking about Sonic Rainboom, and the second act is a lot of walking around looking at the town. It's nothing really happens. I mean, there's some character things happening, but Lauren wanted to show off the town and the design, and let's spend some time here and see what it looks like. So we had a whole second act of just look at the cool art. And I love it. I think it's great. You're not like, all right, move on, because it's just really amazing to look at. And there is character stuff happening underneath that, but it wasn't tied so hardcore to that kind of structural thing, just the 3 acts, I would say. And then there's certain things you got to have. You got to have a nice setup, and then you got to have a little bit of a denouement and a lesson and things like that. But it's pretty much just the 2 act breaks is the major thing you got to have. And then how do you get from this one to this one? How do you get from this one to this one?
All right, next question. And I saw you back there. I'm looking at you, black shirt. Yes, you. I saw you raise your hand.
Mr. Larson, when you wrote the episode Luna Eclipse, was it your idea to come up with Luna's favorite line, haha, the fun has been doubled?
I asked him that question too.
What did I say? Because I don't know.
You said, yeah, probably.
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I wrote the script, so maybe. But it also might have been a revision. I don't remember.
Well, you said when and I during the interview, I asked you, how you had come up with that old-timey speaking style, and you said that you just kind of tried to give it that feel, and so things like "haha, the fun has been doubled" would be.
Yeah, there's stuff that's innate to that kind of speaking.
Yeah,
vows and whatnot, and just sort of not getting it. That's the key. Like she just doesn't get it. So, yeah, I don't know. That's the answer.
All right, guy in the suit there.
So speaking of Sonic Rainboom. Rarity's outfit for the contest, did you, that's kind of like a pretty big detail in the story, because, her outfit is, ridiculous. Did you have any, input on, how, I guess, flamboyant it would be? Or did you just think, she would be in, and Rarity's in an outrageous, flamboyant outfit? Or did you, put in, and she's got rhinestones and she's got heavy lipstick and whatnot?
I would, in a case like that where it's important that she's really dressed up, but it doesn't really matter what she's wearing, I would just say gaudy, over the top, especially since I hadn't seen any animation at that point, and I didn't really know what ponies wore. It would just be say something like she is totally made up, way over the top, something like that, and then the character designers would draw these insane outfits.
So did you get to actually see any of the outfits or like that they had designed, or did you just kind of let
on
them
TV? No, we don't really see. There was a server we could access every now and then to see things, but I lost that really early too. I saw it when you guys saw it.
Moral of the story: don't give M.A. Larson a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Eat it.
You get a piece of paper.
I got a question. I remember you saying that you watched SpongeBob and then submitted a couple of episodes in order to get yourself a job, but then later on you kind of mentioned that you'd have to people would submit things for some other show and you'd have to write back saying we can't look at this. What's the difference?
That's a good question. The sending things back, I was working for this director who's kind of a really big time director. He did The Graduate and Angels in America, like really big movies, and he would get unsolicited screenplays sent to him in terms of, will you direct this? And so those were immediately sent back, like, we can't look at this. When you're writing a spec script, I was writing a spec script of SpongeBob, there's no way I could sell that, because somebody owns SpongeBob that already exists.
All right.
It's strictly to show I can write animation. And at TV writing, that's what you do. You write specs of other shows. If you want to write for House, you would write a spec of, you could do House, but I've always heard it's better to write a different show than the one you're looking for, not House specifically.
It's always Lupus.
Yeah. What I've heard is you should write a spec of a show that's on the air that's similar to the one you're writing for, but not the one you're writing for. Or the one you want to get, I should say. Which is why I did SpongeBob. My friend told me that show was similar to SpongeBob, which it wasn't. I don't know if you've seen it, but it wasn't.
It's very in the back.
Hey Larson, will you be a storyboard writer for season 3?
I don't write story. I can't draw anything. I wrote a couple scripts. That's already done. This stuff. There's a year between writing a script and animation, so. Yes, I have in the past.
All right. Guy in the Wonderbolt back there, yeah.
I was wondering, what was your first image of Discord when writing the Return of Harmony? And did it coincide or excel when John Delancey came on?
I didn't know he was going to look like he looked, but I love his design. It was, the idea was he would have parts from all different animals. And then Lauren and Rob were like, oh, it would be a cool personality as Q. And I'm like, what the hell is that? So I watched a marathon of Next Generations, all the Q episodes, and I was like, wow, this guy's cool. He's a really cool character. And, excuse me. And I loved that interplay with him and Picard. It was so cool. And his voice was so great, so we had no idea we were going to use him or even approach him, but I was still trying to write in his voice because he had such a good voice. And that's always actually a good technique, too. If you hear a good voice, write it that way, and it doesn't matter who actually ends up doing it. Somebody else could have done that voice. I should probably shut up now. John Delancey could only do that voice.
Well, someone else could have read that script, but it wouldn't have been the same character.
Right.
I mean, the elements had to come in. In the derpy shirt.
People have asked, what's your favorite episode? Well, what's your least favorite episode? Or is there an episode you just wrote, or somebody wrote you just hated how it turned out?
No.
Which is your least favorite child?
What's your least
See, I don't want to answer this and piss people off. Because whatever I say, there's going to be people like, I like that episode, We will love it. I don't want to answer that. I don't want to answer
you might
that.
lose some Twitter
There'll be a little
followers.
mob afterwards.
And you'll gain some more.
I don't know what that means.
Just say it. Just say it. Don't worry about it. Just say it. They'll love it.
There's a moose over there?
Yeah. There you go. He doesn't know the reference.
I don't know what that means.
Maybe a light will explode.
No. This isn't BronyCon. Okay, next question. I haven't seen you look. By the way, you look just like Laserpalm 3. If you don't know who he is, you look just like him. So there you go. Anyway.
When you're writing the show, do you write with the target audience in mind, or do you try to give it a broader appeal?
Target audience all the way. That's who it's for.
Follow up, who's the target audience? Is it the kids,
I don't know
their
anymore.
parents, the kids and their parents?
Well, that's a good question, actually. It is a little bit of parents, too. You want parents to want to watch it and not want to turn it off, because they're the ones who usually control the remote. So it's for little girls, but you want the parents to have something. You want something in there for them, too. That's why Pixar is so good.
Straight back.
When you're given the briefing of what the episode's going to be about, like how much freedom? Is it just like a couple points that you're supposed to hit, or how much freedom do you have with that?
The method on this show is so fun. I mean, I've been on a lot of different types of things. I've been on a Kick Patowski. We had an actual writer's room, which is really rare in animation, where we'd all sit in the same room and brainstorm. That was great. And then I've been on other shows where it was like I would write the premise, I would never see anybody else. I would do the whole thing. This show was a beautiful hybrid because we'd have these summits where we'd all get together and pitch ideas, and Lauren and Rob or Megan now would have, here's what I want the overall theme of this season to be, and we would just spitball ideas for 2 days, and come up with a massive list, and maybe we can combine these two into one, or that's not really going to work because we've already done that. And then you get into a rotation, and when it's your turn, you get the premise, and you come in, and it's like a paragraph. So me and Rob and Lauren, or me and Megan and whoever. One of the story meetings I did was me and Megan and Cindy Morrow. You just take that and you just all sit there and, what if we do this? What if we do this? What if we do this? And it's great. By the time you leave that at the end of the day, you have the structure, and then you get to really go from there and put in jokes and character moments and things like that. But to leave with a really solid structure that everybody's on board with, it's so fantastic.
Since that Lauren Faust is no longer part of the My Little Pony team, when you guys are making the newer episodes for the season she's no longer involved with, is there any point where you go to her and say, is this keeping up with the overall show?
No. She's on to other things. I mean, we'll have a story meeting and say, Lauren really liked having mythical creatures. Is there a mythical creature we can use? Or Lauren really wanted to do this with this character. Can we go that way? She's still there. Her ideas are still there, infused into the show. She's definitely there that way, but she's working on other things, and she doesn't work on the show anymore. So Megan, took over that role, and Jason in Canada, and they know what she wants. They've worked with her really closely, and she's still, like I said, she's still very much in the show, just in a more metaphysical sense.
I think we got time for maybe one or two more questions. So, we have another. All right.
What is the central message you think the show purveys to its watchers?
I'm not going to answer that question, but I'll answer a similar question. I don't know.
Have you considered going into politics?
You'd have the brony vote.
I don't know how to answer that, but I think what I see in the show and why I think you guys exist, it's at least why I love the show and really got into it, and this is my favorite thing I work on. There's just none of the cynicism in it. There's none of the, a lot of the shows I've been on, there's this overwhelming desire to be clever and postmodern and all that kind of stuff. And this show is just joyous, and they're nice to each other, and they're good characters, and there's no cynicism in it. I love that. And maybe it's that. Maybe it's let's stop being so, postmodern on each other all the time. Am I right? You guys like that, right? The happiness. Yes. You can actually just be happy and not undercut it with some really cynical joke.
It's you guys that makes the show good.
last one from Dr. Daring Do there.
Yeah, I got a quick one. Something that's always made me wonder, just why did Shirley have a feathered hat in her grocery bag? I've come up with ideas myself, but none of them are really appropriate for the target audience you're talking about earlier.
You have to ask the storyboard artist.
Which I did.
In the script, it said a garden party hat, and that was not a garden party hat.
I was gonna say I talked to one of the storyboards and they said it was in the script.
Like a pin hat?
No, I guess the garden party hat is how they interpreted it.
Maybe that's a Canadian garden party.
Yeah. Canadian ones.
So there you go. It's a cross-cultural miscommunication. But it's better. It's way better that way. It's so much funnier for her to hand him that hat. She needed it. She had to have it. She had to go shopping for it.
All right. Well, so everyone, I think a round of applause for Mr. Larson.
You guys got to come and see Amy and Charlotte tomorrow, and then we're all three doing a panel too. Writers panel. All right.